wanted to do something so bad, but never really ended up doing it? Maybe you were unsure. Maybe you were scared of not doing it perfectly. Maybe you procrastinated, saying that you'd start later. The consequence of delaying action is simply the regret that follows. And as a huge fan of Google, I must add some evidence. In a research by Gilovich and Medbeck on the experience of regret, what, when, and why, it was found out that in the short term, people tend to regret actions, while in the long term, people tend to regret inactions, leading to a temporal reversal in regret patterns. So, simply put, over time, we regret not doing something rather than doing it wrong. To further support this, Kinnear and Mehta conducted a study on 3 different age groups, asking them what they would do differently if they could live their lives over again. The most common regret across all 3 samples was an inaction, like not taking more risk, not being more assertive, or not spending more time with family. Let me tell you, this regret of inaction hits even harder when you know you've been given opportunities that not many were given growing up. For example, being in an international school like this means I was given the opportunity to broaden my experience with a global education and extracurriculars like taking part in model events or volunteering to help raise funds through the intra club. If I had not been given access to a proper education, I cannot imagine just how different I would be today. So, how do we avoid this regret of inaction and ensure that we make use of all the opportunities and privileges handed to us? Well, the obvious answer is to just start. The question, though, is how? To tell you the truth, I don't know. But what I do know is that we are more capable in handling failures than we give ourselves credit for. Now, I know this because to most it's the fear of finding out that they're not capable, which hinders them from trying in the very first place. When 2 Harvard psychologists, Dan Gilbert and Timothy Wilson, studied decision making, they found out that we consistently underestimate our ability to adapt and grow. We think failure will crush us, but most of the time we recover faster and learn more than we expect. They called it the end of history illusion, which basically means this. At any point in our lives, we believe we've already become the person we're going to be. We think that our present version is the final version. But when we look back in the past, even just 2 years, we realized we've changed far more than we can imagine. So why do we assume the future will be any different? This illusion tricks us into thinking that if something goes wrong now, it will stay stuck with us forever, when we've never actually stayed stuck in the past. So, we'll never truly find out how capable we are if we don't take the first step. Let me give you a personal example of mine. A few months back, I first discovered how beautiful the violin is. I know, a little too late for that. I mean, do you know the average age when people start learning the violin? It's usually around the age of 5 to 7. Because it is a very difficult instrument, people start learning as soon as possible. So mostly 5. And 16 is obviously nowhere near that. But I couldn't help it. The more I explored it, the more I started to fall in love with the instrument. So when I finally considered learning it, came the all too dreaded list of pros and cons. To give you some context, I've been a very indecisive person. I still am. So naturally, I can never survive making a decision without doing tons of research and weighing out all the pros and cons. So when I decided to learn the violin, I remember sitting with that idea for weeks, writing out things like pros, learn something new, beautiful sound, sense of accomplishment, cons, expensive, time consuming, hard. And suddenly, the cons looked heavier, and I found myself trying to rationalize something that wasn't meant to be rational. It was meant to be felt. So, I forced myself to just show up one day because I realized maybe not everything needs a guarantee. Maybe all it needs is a leap. I immediately told my parents about this newfound interest of mine, and within a few weeks, I was enrolled in violin classes. Soren Kierkegaard called it a leap of faith, that moment you step before you know where you land. It's terrifying, but it's also kind of magical, because in doing so, you're not just trusting the path, you're trusting in your future self to build it along the way. Science gives us one more reason to start anyway. Our brains never stop changing, a concept called neuroplasticity. You can pick up a new skill at any age, be it 16 or 60, and your brain will physically rewire itself to learn it. Now, the thing about lighting your own spark is that you don't just light up your own room, it creates a little something called the ripple effect. When you finally push that obstacle in front of you that's been holding you back, the movement is not just internal. You change the atmosphere around you. My small decision to try and practice the violin did not just teach me a skill. It taught my family about commitment. It showed my friends that it's okay to start a challenging hobby, even in your late teens. Every single act of courage you commit, whether it's finally applying for that competition, even preparing for an upcoming test, or learning a new language, sends a signal. It's a quiet declaration to the world that you are no longer defined by your resistance to start. This declaration becomes inspiration for the person sitting next to you, who's probably battling their very own obstacle. Between the first months I started learning the instrument, I encountered lots of challenges. It took me a whole month to perfect the very first song. Mind you, it was the easiest song in the syllabus. But something changed over time, not just in my playing, but in me. I started to enjoy the process. Each day I practiced, and slowly the fear of imperfection began to fade. I started to play just for the sake of my enjoyment, without the expectations weighing me down. Now, when we light that spark, we'll never truly know what it leads to. And that's the beautiful part. It's, it's also kind of ironic because when we realize that the uncertainty that once held us back is also the very thing that fuels us. Because the first few months I was struggling, I was absolutely struggling. But then, when I finally enjoyed the process, it also taught me about how resistant I am. See, people who change the world, who built empires, they didn't have bigger sparks than us. They just didn't let theirs die. Maybe everything we dream of is just a series of melodies waiting to be played. Some of us spend years staring at the instrument, waiting to feel ready, waiting for certainty. But here's the thing, readiness is a myth. You tune the strings as you go. You hit a few wrong notes, but eventually you find your rhythm. So whether it's a violin, or a dream, or just a quiet idea sitting in the corner of your mind, take the leap. Because sometimes it might even open opportunities and doors you didn't even know existed before. And when you finally question yourself what this spark might lead to, remember this. Penicillin, the drug that went on to save over 200 million lives, started as an accidental discovery. And even Google started as a research project between two students. Great things in real life rarely begin with certainty. It begins with a spark and someone stubborn enough to not let it die. Thank you.